Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm GOVT and these are the headlines. In Rawalpindi, the Chinese Defense Minister called on Pakistan's Army Chief General Bajwa and acknowledged the military's efforts for regional peace. During the meeting, the two sides exchanged views on regional security and enhanced bilateral defense collaboration. General Bajwa thanked the Chinese minister for Beijing's support to Pakistan on all key issues. China has slapped sanctions on 4 Americans as a countermeasure against previous U.S. sanctions on Chinese officials over Hong Kong affairs. In a press briefing, a spokesperson for the Chinese ministry said the U.S. should stop interfering in Hong Kong in China's internal affairs. In Ethiopia, the defiant Tigray leaders have called on Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to withdraw troops from the embattled region. 2 days after the Ethiopian army claimed to have captured the capital city of Tigray region, the head of rebels said the war is not over there. He said the fighting will continue until federal troops leave the region. The U.S. drug maker Moderna says it would ask American and the European regulators on Monday to allow emergency use of its coronavirus vaccine. Clinical studies show the jab is more than 94% effective at protecting people from the virus. Pfizer, which has a similar jab, has already filed for the same U.S. approval. The virus has so far infected nearly 63 million people across the globe and has claimed over 1.4 million lives, including 8,025 in Pakistan. And in football, Wolverhampton Wanderers beat Arsenal 2-1 in an English Premier League clash at the Emirates Stadium. Pedro Neto opened the scoring for Wolves in the 27th minute, but was equalised by Gabriel 3 minutes later. Daniel Podence then put Wolves ahead in the 42nd minute, with Arsenal failing to find an equaliser. Those are the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. We start our news bulletin from Pakistan. In Rawalpindi, the Chinese Defense Minister called on Pakistan Army's Chief General Bajwa and acknowledged the military's efforts for regional peace. During the meeting, the two sides exchanged views on regional security and enhanced bilateral defense collaboration. The Chinese minister appreciated the military for ensuring the security of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. General Bajwa thanked the Chinese minister for Beijing's support to Pakistan on all key issues. He said Pakistan values its time-tested and brotherly relations with China. A memorandum of understanding was also signed for the enhancement of defense cooperation between the two armies. Later, the minister laid a wreath at the Martyrs' Monument. Beijing has slapped sanctions on 4 Americans as a countermeasure against previous U.S. sanctions on Chinese officials over Hong Kong affairs. In a press briefing, a spokesperson for the Chinese ministry said the U.S. must stop interfering in Hong Kong and China's internal affairs. She said the U.S. nationals will be banned from entering mainland China as well as Hong Kong and Macau. Earlier this month, the U.S. said it was imposing sanctions on 4 more Chinese individuals for their role in Hong Kong's crackdown. Ties between Beijing and Washington have become strained over a host of issues, including trade, Hong Kong, and coronavirus. In Afghanistan, the Taliban have killed the police chief of OBE district in an ambush in western Herat province. A police spokesperson says there were no other casualties. Meanwhile, the Defense Ministry says it has killed 7 militants in an airstrike in Jero district of southeastern Ghazni province. It said the 7 militants were companions of Hamza Wazir Sani, who Afghan forces believe to be behind yesterday's attack. 34 people were killed in 2 suicide bombings yesterday. The Taliban have called the agreement with the Afghan government on procedural rules for peace talks a positive step. Taliban spokesman Dr. Mohammad Naeem said there is no clear response from Kabul on the development. However, he said a spokesman for the Kabul delegation has acknowledged that the overall procedure has been agreed upon, but he said a further discussion is needed on intra-Afghan talks. Meanwhile, a member of the government team said both the sides only agreed to the 21 articles of the rules. Both the sides had opened talks in Qatar on September the 12th, but failed to reach an agreement on the working principles. The European Union says it will help vulnerable refugees in Pakistan by providing basic amenities amid COVID-19. In an interview, EU Ambassador to Pakistan Andrula Kaminara said the bloc has signed an MOU with the UNHCR to give $12 million to Afghan refugees. The 3-year project will benefit 370,000 migrants and the Pakistani host communities. This funding aims to promote health and social protection by constructing sanitary facilities amid a second wave of coronavirus. In India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi says he will not repeal new agriculture reforms as farmers refuse to budge on their demands. Speaking at a public rally in northern part of the country, Modi said the new laws will benefit the farmers in coming days. The new laws can pave the way for the government to stop buying grain at guaranteed prices. Farmers fear the reforms will leave them at the mercy of big companies. Modi dismissed their fears and accused the opposition of spreading rumors about the future of farmers. But farmers insist they will continue their protest until the demands are fulfilled. In Ethiopia, the head of Tigray People's Liberation Front says the group is still fighting near the region's capital, Mekelle. Sebastian Jebba Michael's statement comes 2 days after the government claimed capturing the city. He denied the reports of fleeing to South Sudan. Sebastian added the soldiers have captured some Eritreans fighting alongside federal forces. Meanwhile, a spokeswoman for the Prime Minister's office said the government's priority is to bring stability in the restive region. She said Sebastian claims about the continuation of fight should be ignored. The war in Tigray region has killed hundreds and forced thousands to flee to Sudan. Iran has buried its assassinated nuclear scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh in Tehran. Senior military commanders and his family attended the ceremony due to the coronavirus precautions. In a televised speech, Defense Minister Brigadier General Amir Hatami said no crime will go unanswered by the Iranian people. Meanwhile, state media alleged that the weapon used in the killing was made in Israel. Houthi rebels say they have killed 8 Yemeni soldiers in a rocket attack on a military camp in the Marib province. The Houthi-run Al-Masirah TV says 7 other soldiers were wounded in the strike. Meanwhile, Yemeni army says 7 civilians were killed in the Houthi rocket attack on a village in Al-Hudaydah city. Military said 10 others were also wounded. Yemen's Red Sea port city of Hudaydah is a vital lifeline for millions facing starvation. The city has seen a shaky ceasefire between the government and the Houthis after a UN-sponsored truce in Stockholm in 2018. The latest round of talks of Syrian Constitutional Committee is set to start today at the UN headquarters in Geneva. The UN's envoy, Geir Pedersen, says talks aim to draft a new constitution to pave the way for a political solution to the conflict. He said the peace talks are scheduled to run till Friday and resume in January next year. There is no set deadline for the outcomes of the negotiations. Pedersen said there is a deep lack of trust between Syrian governments and opposition's representatives. Syrian Constitutional Committee was officially launched in Geneva last year to draft a new constitution. Armenia's president has asked the government to resign and hold fresh elections within a year, calling the Russia-brokered ceasefire agreement with Azerbaijan a great national tragedy. President Armen Sarkisyan said a technocrat interim government of national accord should be formed at the earliest. Sarkisyan said the interim government could work for 6 months to 1 year and lead the country to early elections. He also called for major reforms to the constitution to establish better checks and balances on the government. The 19th Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit has come to a close, with Pakistan represented by its Parliamentary Secretary for Foreign Affairs. During the meeting, Andalib Abbas highlighted the bloc's importance for Pakistan in achieving regional peace and stability. The Parliamentary Secretary cautioned against the rise in racist incidents inspired by Islamophobia. She also highlighted Prime Minister Imran Khan's initiative of opposing illicit financial flows from developing nations. Andalib said bringing this stolen wealth back will help affected countries pursue their development objectives. The summit was virtually hosted by India and was represented by its Vice President Venkaiah Naidu. The Prime Ministers of Russia, China and 4 other Central Asian countries also took part. In the United States, the battleground state of Wisconsin has reconfirmed President-elect Joe Biden's victory by over 20,000 votes after a recount. State election officials say the recount produced minor changes in the final breakdown of over 800,000 ballots. More in this report.
U.S. President Donald Trump's struggle to claw his way back into the Oval Office through legal action is on a downward spiral. After setbacks in Georgia, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, Biden's overall lead over President Trump in Wisconsin has grown by 87 votes after the recount. Trump's campaign requested a recount in battleground states, making allegations of widespread electoral fraud. Biden won the presidential election with 306 Electoral College votes, leading Trump by over 6 million in popular vote. Meanwhile, the president-elect is set to receive his first intelligence briefing today. With the presidential transition picking pace, Biden unveiled his all-female senior press team. The team, led by Kate Bedingfield, comprises Jen Psaki as White House press secretary. Earlier on Sunday, President-elect Joe Biden sustained a hairline fracture in his midfoot after slipping while playing with his dog.
Jordan and Palestine have pinned hopes on U.S. President-elect Joe Biden to revive peace talks over a 2-state solution. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas met Jordan's King Abdullah in the Red Port city of Aqaba. In a palace statement, the monarch said he fully backs Palestinian statehood. He stressed Jordan stands with all its resources alongside Palestinians in achieving their legitimate rights. In his first conversation with an Arab leader since the election, Biden spoke with King Abdullah last week. He told the monarch that he hoped to cooperate on supporting a 2-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The 4th round of U.S.-mediated talks between Lebanon and Israel has been postponed until further notice. In an interview, Israel's Energy Minister Yuval Steinmetz said the U.S. mediators will contact the 2 sides separately to prepare for the next round of talks. In October, delegations from Lebanon and Israel convened at a UN base to try to resolve a dispute about their maritime border. However, despite multiple rounds of talks, there has been no breakthrough. More stories to follow, but right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back. The U.S. drug maker Moderna says it would ask American and European regulators on Monday to allow emergency use of its coronavirus vaccine. Clinical studies show that jab is more than 94% effective at protecting people from the virus. Pfizer, which has a similar jab, has already filed for the same U.S. approval. Moderna is just behind Pfizer and its German partner BioNTech in seeking to begin vaccinations in the U.S. in December. British regulators also are assessing the Pfizer shot and another from AstraZeneca. Experts say multiple vaccine candidates must succeed for the world to stamp out the pandemic. India has recorded nearly 39,000 cases and 433 fatalities overnight, taking the death toll to over 137,000. The global number of deaths from the virus has crossed 1.45 million, with the caseload exceeding 62 million. More in this report.
An unprecedented surge in coronavirus cases across the world has made it virtually impossible to imagine the return of normalcy. Canada is set to extend its restrictions for all travelers entering the country until January 2021. And authorities in Mexico warn the actual number of cases may be much higher due to low testing. The COVID-19 death toll in the US has crossed 266,000, with over 13 million cases. The top US infectious disease expert has warned of a surge upon surge in the coming weeks.
We're going to have to make decisions as a nation, state, city, and family that we're in a very difficult time, and we're going to have to do the kinds of restrictions of things we would like to have done, particularly in this holiday season, because we're entering into what's really a precarious situation because we're in the middle of a steep slope.
British authorities say the risk of a third wave is imminent in the absence of right measures to curb the virus, while a curfew in Turkey has failed to contain the second wave, with the country reporting record-high deaths for the 7th straight day. In another development, North Korea is stepping up disinfection work as cases rise in the peninsula.
We are following prevention guidelines by disinfecting all equipment and facilities within reach. As the weather is getting cold, we are enhancing a checkup on people with fever. We will keep in mind that our enemy is carelessness and self-conceit when we proceed this disinfection work.
Whereas South Korea has announced a ban on year-end parties, among other curbs, after China has also observed a slight uptick in cases, with 18 infections reported on the mainland.
In Pakistan, 40 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours, raising the death toll to 8,025. The Health Ministry says over 2,800 tested positive for the virus overnight. The ministry said there are more than 48,000 active COVID-19 cases in the country. It said out of over 398,000 countrywide cases, more than 341,000 have recovered so far. The ministry said over 173,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while Punjab has reported over 119,000 cases so far. In Pakistan, the three-day celebrations for the 551st birth anniversary of Baba Guru Nanak are in full swing in the Nankana Sahib district. Last week, a delegation of Indian Sikh pilgrims arrived in Pakistan to take part in the celebrations. Baba Guru Nanak was the founder of Sikhism and is the first of the 10 Sikh Gurus. His birth is celebrated worldwide as the Guru Nanak Gurpurab. In his video message, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan extended greetings to the Sikh community and vowed to protect their holy sites. 13 people have died and 15 others are injured after a passenger bus and van collided in Pakistan's Punjab province. Rescue officials say both the vehicles caught fire after the accident in the Sheikhupura district. Officials said low visibility due to foggy weather was a factor in the incident. They added death toll is feared to rise as most of the injured people are in critical condition. The deceased reportedly belonged to the same family who were returning to Narowal from Lahore after attending a wedding ceremony. Following years of campaigning by animal rights advocates and American pop star Cher, Pakistan's lonely elephant Kavan has finally landed in Cambodia to start a new life in a sanctuary. Cher was on the tarmac at the airport in Siem Reap to greet Kavan and the vets who accompanied him. She had written songs pressing for Kavan's release from isolation at Islamabad Zoo. She also spent the last few days with him in Pakistan. Animal rescue organization FOR-TAT said Kavan had another 90 minutes drive ahead and will be released in daylight on Tuesday. In Sri Lanka, prison guards shot dead 8 inmates and wounded 35 others while controlling a riot on the outskirts of the capital, Colombo. Police say inmates were rebelling against overcrowding at the Mahara jail amid surging coronavirus cases. 2 prison officers have been critically injured in the unrest. More than 1,000 inmates in 5 prisons have tested positive for the coronavirus and at least 2 have died. About 50 prison guards have also tested positive. In Brazil, candidates backed by President Jair Bolsonaro have suffered major defeats in the country's municipal elections. Voters returned to vote in 57 cities, including 18 state capitals, amid surging COVID-19 and pre-poll violence. In the country's financial hub, Sao Paulo, center-right Mayor Bruno Covas was re-elected for a new 4-year term. President Jair Bolsonaro's candidate for Sao Paulo's mayor came in 4th in first-round voting. In Rio de Janeiro, centrist Eduardo Paes emerged victorious instead of Bolsonaro-backed Marcelo Crivella. Bolsonaro-supported candidates also suffered defeat in Fortaleza and Belém. The municipal election outcome is likely to complicate Bolsonaro's re-election. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The UK has ordered British telecommunications firms not to install the new Huawei 5G kit from September. In a statement, Digital Minister Oliver Dowden says London is setting out a plan for the removal of high-risk vendors. Dowden said unprecedented powers will be used to identify and ban equipment which poses a threat to national security. He said the government is collaborating with the Japanese firm NEC. He also mentioned plans to establish new research facilities to diversify the 5G supply chain. The minister said London has already earmarked an initial $333 million investment for the trials. Earlier, Britain announced all Huawei equipment will be removed by 2027 after security fears and US pressure. Huawei has termed the decision disappointing. China's Chang'e 5 lunar probe has successfully completed the combination separation. The National Space Administration says the mission is ready for a soft landing on the moon. It said the orbiter and the sample return vehicle will wait for docking with the ascender on the lunar orbit. All systems of the probe are in a good condition and the communication for ground measurement and control works well. Deputy Chief Designer Peng Jin says all 4 parts of the probe will form different combinations.
Depending on the phases of the different missions and the mission every probe carries out, they form different combinations. So during its flight, the probe's configuration will be different. Some parts will be on the orbit, others will be on the surface, and still others will carry a parachute and land back on Earth.
The eruption of one of Indonesia's most dangerous volcanoes has caused panic and evacuation of nearly 3,000 residents. The government says no casualties have been reported so far, but the displaced need money and aid. Authorities have warned the nearby areas of hot clouds, lava avalanche and poisonous gas. They added the volcano has acquired the second highest level on the country's 4-tier alert system due to its increasing threat. Indonesia has nearly 130 active volcanoes, more than any other country. In Australia, guests at Fraser Island's largest resort have been told to leave as a significant bushfire continues to burn. Firefighters are struggling to control the blaze that has already destroyed 40% of the World Heritage listed island. Temperatures are forecast to peak at 34 degrees Celsius as a heat wave sweeps across the region. Incident controller James Haig said the vegetation is extremely dry and easy to ignite. He said firefighters are also stymied by limited access to the blaze in the island's remote north. Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service said the fire was burning on 2 fronts across 74,000 hectares. It said the blaze is not threatening properties. New Zealand has filed charges against 13 parties over the fatal volcanic eruption on White Island last year. The country's primary regulator, WorkSafe, says the parties did not meet safety obligations while taking tourists there. WorkSafe Chief Executive Phil Parks says 10 organizations have been charged under the Health and Safety at Work Act. Each charge carries a maximum fine of $1.06 million. A further 3 have been charged as directors or individuals and face maximum fines of $211,000. The coroner's office says they are conducting a separate investigation to examine whether criminal charges should be laid. The surprise eruption of the volcano in December 2019 killed 22 tourists and injured dozens. Argentine prosecutors are investigating Diego Maradona's doctor for possible manslaughter following his death 4 days ago. Police in Buenos Aires have raided the house and private clinic of Leopoldo Luque. The police are trying to establish if there was negligence in Maradona's treatment following the surgery. The 60-year-old died of a heart attack at his home where he was recuperating. Dr. Luque denies any wrongdoing. The football legend scored 34 goals in 91 appearances for Argentina, representing them in 4 World Cups. A former street dog in the Bolivian city of El Alto has found his calling as the co-pilot of a local taxi driver. More about this canine in this report.
They say a dog is a man's best friend, and a canine in Bolivia has become just that for a taxi driver. Cano was rescued by 57-year-old Santos Quispe, who began working as a taxi driver at the start of the pandemic.
This year, Cano has been driving with owner since the pandemic started. Before then, we didn't go out. This year, since the lady started feeding him bones, she hired us to work as her taxi drivers. He has been my co-pilot every day for 5 to 6 months now. But before we didn't go out, he used to hop into the car and I used to let him. And eventually he didn't want to get down. Now he looks for me when I go to work.
The 3-year-old mongrel hopped into Quispe's taxi 7 months ago and has not looked back. Both have found comfort in one another's presence during these hard times.
In the morning, Cano wakes up with his ears all flopped over, and for me he's like a good luck charm, and it makes me want to work for some cash. My father always told me the sign of money was found in floppy ears. He approaches me with his little ears, and so I go out to work because I know I'll have money and I have to have faith.
Cano knows how to behave when passengers board the taxi and knows not to disturb them. Quispe and Cano help transport food for other street dogs around the city.
In the Colombian capital of Bogota, a hummingbird sanctuary is providing a picturesque respite from the stresses of urban life. More in this report.
The Paramuno corridor, located in the forest reserve to the east of Bogota, is proving to be a source of relief for city dwellers. 10 years ago, workers at the Montserrat Hill began to work with native species to restore the deforested hill. Currently, 115 species of birds have been spotted, including 18 types of hummingbirds and some migratory species.
Sometimes it does not seem like it is real because we are in front of a city of 8 million inhabitants who generate noise on a daily basis. You can hear noise from the city, the generation of population, aggressiveness. This trail in Montserrat is like an oasis where a person can come, let go of their stress and excess baggage.
Every day, the visitors take delight in watching the hummingbirds with their binoculars and capturing them with their camera lenses. The trail supervisor, Camilo Cantor, says a good birding day can see on average from 25 to 35 different species of birds.
I think it becomes a privilege for many people in Colombia and bird watchers around the world, because the hummingbirds here are exclusive to this area. They are not seen in other parts of the country. Maybe they will be, but with difficulty. They would have to walk, wait a long time for a hummingbird to land on a flower. At the Paramuno Trail, with these feeders, we are guaranteeing that in a short time, you can catch a glimpse, enjoy and photograph them.
Hummingbirds are a unique species on the American continent and found in great diversity in Colombia.
Russia's breakdancer Kastei and Japan's Shige were crowned the Red Bull BC1 champions in Austria. More in this report.
Hey, just a kid, drop the bass.
The 17th edition of the Red Bull BC1 invited 16 of the world's best breakers from 11 countries. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, there have been few chances for face-to-face battles. But this crew managed to meet at Salzburg's Hangar 7, which houses the Flying Bulls aircraft as well as a collection of Formula One cars. Kastei, a member of the 316 crew, won the breakdancing title for the second year in a row by beating Belgium's Mad Max.
I feel super happy. Yeah, but now I can't believe it. For me, when I come at the first battle stage, it was like I'm at practice. But it was a nice place for practice because no people, no crazy reaction. But it kept me calm because nobody crowd to you, oh, let's go. And it was okay. And when I see my family, of course, I was very happy.
Shige, a member of the Red Bull BC1 All-Stars, became the youngest ever competitor to win the title at the age of 18 when he beat Russia's Al-Khalil.
To be honest, I'm super happy right now, and I still can't believe it's real, you know. And yeah, I worked hard for this competition. Not only this year, you know, I have been working hard to win this competition. So I'm super happy right now.
Breakdancing is also scheduled to feature at the 2024 Paris Olympic Games.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has stressed the need to carry out economic policies with responsibility. Pyongyang state media said Kim gave these directions while presiding over a meeting of the Politburo of ruling Workers' Party. He said the Politburo criticized economic organs for failing to provide guidance for monetary tasks ahead of a Congress next year. In August, Kim said the ruling party would hold a Congress in January to decide on a new 5-year plan. It has been a tough year for the country as the coronavirus pandemic has squeezed the ravaged economy even more. U.S. stocks have opened lower as investors looked set to cash in some of the historically strong gains logged in November. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is trading lower by about 1/3%, while the S&P 500 shed about 0.5%. The Nasdaq Composite is trading fractionally higher. Meanwhile, oil prices tumbled on uncertainty about whether OPEC Plus would agree to extend large output cuts at talks this week. But vaccine hopes still kept benchmark crudes on track to rise more than a fifth in November. In football, Wolverhampton Wanderers beat Arsenal 2-1 in a Premier League clash at the Emirates Stadium. The Gunners sit 14th in the table after 5 losses in 10 league games. Pedro Neto opened the scoring for Wolves in the 27th minute but was equalised by Gabriel 3 minutes later. Daniel Podence then put the Wolves ahead in the 42nd minute with Arsenal failing to find an equaliser. This is Arsenal's worst start to a season since 1981. In another fixture, Chelsea played a goalless draw against Tottenham Hotspur at Stamford Bridge, while Manchester United came from behind to beat Southampton 3-2 at St Mary's Stadium. Meanwhile, AC Milan beat Fiorentina 2-0 at San Siro to maintain their dominance on the Serie A table. Alessio Romagnoli and Franck Kessié scored goals for the hosts. Romagnoli put Milan ahead in the 17th minute and Kessié added a second goal from a penalty 11 minutes later. Milan are now 21 Serie A games unbeaten since losing to Geneva in March. They top the table with 23 points from 9 matches and 5 clear of the nearest rivals Inter Milan. In another fixture, Napoli thrashed Roma 4-0 at Stadio San Paolo. Lorenzo Insigne put Napoli ahead with a sublime free kick in the 30th minute. Fabian Ruiz, Dries Mertens and Matteo Politano added 3 more goals in the second half to hand Roma their first defeat of the season. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.